Oh, that was kind of close. Whoopsie. All right, I got a good inch to spare there though, so. Whew. It's kind of coated in ice, so I'd rather just let it thaw out in there, and the water will run up to the door and out. Okay, it's in. I think the back is full of like winter tires and stuff though. I'm not even going to touch this. I didn't really want to mess with the ice on the roof because I know this this cover will just rip. I'm sure it's frozen up there too, and it'll just tear. So let's let it thaw out. A little bit of water in here won't hurt. It'll run all out there to the door and on out the driveway. So we'll just leave it alone for now. All right, so in just a minute, we'll be back on a different day and we'll do an unboxing, so to speak. All right, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yo, Tube, what about that 6-wheel Argo you bought? Remember that video you uploaded? Had to hustle down the road to get this great deal on a 6-wheel Argo? And we were all excited to see you rebuild it and put it back on the road, well, the trail. Here's what happened. I got myself in a bit of a pickle because I was fine. I had a bush machine, a bush swamper, and then I got that 6-wheeler, and I thought, that's perfect, that's all I need. But then, you know what happens, you look at Marketplace, and this thing popped up. And of course I ignored it. It comes up, first of all, it's like I already have a bunch of amphibious stuff. I don't need another Argo. And it said blown engine in the ad, so I definitely don't want that, right? I have too many things on the go. I don't want some Argo sitting around with a blown engine that I'm never going to get to. But you know what happens when you sit there and dwell on something, you think about it, and you think about it, and you come up with reasons why you need it. Imagine if I could fix this engine without too much effort or cost, and then it's a pretty capable machine. You know, I could actually go down the river and go fishing. I could put a snow blade on it and push snow around here in the wintertime. Could throw the grandkids in the back and take them for rides around the yard. And eventually, I just went ahead and bought it. But now I got too many things. So here's what I decided. I only want my bush machine, my original 16-wheeler that I started with on those, and this Argo. So the bush swamper went first. First I wanted to check to see if it would float. I thought that would be a neat thing to do. So that's another video, won't be a long one, but you'll find it in the uploads there somewhere. Just see a picture of the orange 16-wheeler about to go in the lake. See how that turns out. So then it sold, and I had to sell the 6-wheeler because I just don't have time for 2 Argos. I don't have storage. It's just going to sit outside and collect weeds. So a fella came down, bought it for the same amount I bought it for, and it turns out that it was a relative of a, it's sort of a family member kind of thing, distant family member bought it and fixed it all up beautiful. And here's what that looks like now. All right, so an awful lot of other things took place around here. So this had to sit for a year and a half. So now that it's in the garage, let's take a little walk around and see what all I got. So 1997 Argo Conquest. Now you'll see it has a top on it. When I bought it, it didn't have this top on it. I eventually followed up with the fella, and because I didn't want the top, but then I later thought, you know what, I do. And now that I have it, let's take a look at this top. I mean, we'll get in the Argo in a second here, but this is a work of art. Okay, let's take a look at this creation, because this is really something. First of all, every single door handle on this thing is handmade, which I think is kind of cool that, you know, in fact, this entire top is handmade. This is not something you can buy off the shelf. So let's take a look inside here. You'll see that each door is made of plywood, and then there's like a screen door attached, and it's just really something. Like, check this out. All right, every one of them opens. So let's take a look inside. Now, pretty stinky in here. It's got old gas. I'm going to siphon all that gas out. Also, because it sat outside long enough, it became like a storage shed for my tires. You know, anything with a roof that sits outside becomes a storage shed. But let's just take a look at this. Somebody has built an angle iron frame all the way around this thing. And now it looks a little ratty inside here, but it's because he formed a thin piece of plywood over this steel structure. And look at how complex it is. He made curves in the corners and everything. He sloped the back, he sloped the front. Like, this would be pretty hard to do. And then on top of the plywood, he's laid down tons of fiberglass. So it's an actual hard shell top. I mean, that is one solid piece of work. Just imagine somebody welded in this entire frame. Well, they didn't weld it to the Argo, of course. It comes off. All right. Like, just look at these. I gotta add oil to these hinges because, you know, they're a little stiff. You know, they do work, but they're a little stiff. But every one is handmade with a little spring on it to hold it up in place. And of course, they all come off pretty easily. So you'll see he's welded on little pins on each door, or well, kind of like both doors are on the same pin. All you gotta do is lift it up and she's gone. All right, I gotta get these tires out of here. I don't have it bolted down right now, but it is drilled for bolts to hold it down. But just imagine the time he took to actually measure out on plywood, cut out each door, make a frame for the window to sit in, make himself some hinges here. Each one's welded by hand, just cutting tubing, welding it to a piece of plate steel. Pretty wild. You know, there's no grease. Oh, it's just a bolt. It just looks like he's just welded a bolt right to the frame here. Well, there's a nut. I don't know what he's done. But anyways, that's the homemade hinge attached to, looks like 2 pieces of angle iron welded together to make the structure. Pretty wild. This one's functional, works. The spring is nice and functional. The hinge is loose, and the latch is loose. Just like that. The front tires for my Falcon. And some ATV bumper I found on Marketplace. I want to put on this somewhere. I don't even know where, but... Oh, it came with a dust cover. And a pretty good selection of spare parts. Ow. I was looking everywhere for this. This was my scope. Yeah, my scope. I've been looking everywhere for that. Oh well, I know where it is now. What else? More parts. brake parts, chain tensioning parts, lots of spare stuff. All right, let's get those other two doors off. Okay, so the fella even hooked up a windshield wiper motor with wires running down. I can put on a switch. Of course, I need the actual arm and wiper, but I'd imagine I could find something. It looks like a lot of water is getting into that plywood underneath there and rotting it out. I don't know what I'll do there. Maybe I'll just wrap it up in fiberglass and seal that up, and maybe it'll last just the way it is. It's even got little holy crap handles welded on for passengers. Not quite so claustrophobic in here anymore. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the padded seats in the back, but I can make something up. So here's what I was kind of excited about. I've never had an Argo that has hydraulic brakes. I always had the long handles that run down for leverage. This one has master cylinders for both right and left steer. So I'm kind of anxious to see what that's like. And I don't know if they're set up to operate well right now. I'm gonna have to go through the brakes. But the other thing that really got me on this was, and you'll see a can down there, some of the parts that represent the blown engine, but I'll get into that shortly. But I thought if I can get this Argo working and plowing snow, I thought the neatest thing is I can heat the cab, because it has a liquid cooled Kawasaki engine in it. So obviously with liquid cooled engine, you can create heat. It's got the full radiator, it's got the plumbing into the cab. Now this pipe here feeds into, you'll see the holes on the dash up there for a defroster on the windshield. And then there's another runs off in the distance there, and it feeds into a hole here. But I don't know if this cap just comes off or if it unscrews or if it was capped on purpose. And the thought might have been it was pushing too much heat through that and not enough for the windshield. And maybe the windshield was just fogging up too much. So maybe what he did is cap that, and the heat, you know, there's enough heat coming out of the dash there to get the windshield and the rest of the cab. We'll find out. But yeah, if this thing works out and it can produce enough heat to heat this entire thing, well, yeah, that's how I'm doing snow. Forget this whole snow in the face stuff. Pretty wild what some people can do when they put their mind to it, to build an entire steel frame and make their own roof. Like, imagine, I mean, you could just buy one, but no, some people just need to build everything themselves. So that's why I flipped for the roof eventually. I was like, well, that is just a neat thing. I just don't know offhand what horsepower this engine is. It's obviously a V-twin, liquid cooled. I think maybe 23 horse. So you can see down the bottom, everything is dual chain. This is a pretty heavy duty machine. I'm pretty sure this was maybe top of the line in 1997. I remember reading something that the Conquest was the best selling Argo. 8-wheel drive Conquest was the best selling Argo in 1997. And I can kind of see why. What are these? Cup holders maybe? Oh, that was yes, cup holders for pop. Of course, the driver needs one up here. You imagine maybe building a rack in here, so all your stuff would get stored down here. And if you built a rack with like some kind of foam rolled out on it, and you could sleep in here. Why not? Well, maybe like half of it, so that you can hop down on the other half. All right, I have to figure out what everything on the dash does. I do have a manual that explains everything, but you know, you can see on the handlebar it's got a winch switch. So I'm all set up for the winch, and I have my plow. What happened was, like, a year went by of this sitting outside, and someone in another town put up an ad for Argo plow for sale. So of course I offered him $100 less than, you know, but politely, just saying, listen, if you don't get your price, let me leave you a price, and no worries if you're not interested. And, you know, he replied right away, said, come get it. So now I have the plow, but I've got to get this Argo working first. Like, there's so many switches on it, I don't even know what they all do. I don't even know. There's a lot of different things going on here. All right, so we got a voltmeter for the battery, and we got a water temperature gauge, most important. Here's what I think happened, because you'll see there's a push rod in that can down here, and it's bent. So this is what I think happened. I think this got overheated, either got low on water or just overworked, not really sure, but I think it overheated, and under this cover, you can see where the rockers are, and the valves come up. But I think what's happened is the valve guides came out of their aluminum seats. So it's hardened metal valve guides pressed into aluminum heads. And if it gets too hot, they're just going to swim around in there until they pop out. The valve's going to stick, and the push rod's going to, you know, the cam is going to continue to push the push rod even if it hits something solid, and it's just going to bend it over. So I don't know how bad the situation is, but with any luck, it still has compression, and you know, it's not stuck. I'll turn it over by hand first. You can see the primary clutch down in there. I'd like to, I mean, I can spin that by hand, I'm sure. Yeah. And I do feel compression. There's nothing making noise. Nothing grinding. It's a good sign. This engine could be fine. It just overheated one time. It needs a little attention now.